The Ashbourne chapel stood silent, draped in fresh white roses and lavender garlands. Every pew was filled with noblemen and ladies, fans fluttering nervously, eyes glancing toward the aisle. The bride was late Lady Evelyn Ashbourne Cripter. Bouquet tighter, her fingers trembling beneath lace gloves. Her father paced outside the vestibule, muttering, "He's just delayed. A carriage wheel, perhaps?" But Evelyn knew. Somewhere deep inside her, she felt that something had gone terribly wrong. Lord Thomas Everleigh had not written the day before. He had not responded to the note she'd sent that morning. And now, with the music stilled and whispers rising among the guests, Evelyn stood abandoned on what was meant to be the most celebrated day of her life. When the footman finally approached, her father, his whisper was like a knife. "He's not coming." Her mother gasped. Her aunt clutched a pearl necklace as if choking. Evelyn's knees buckled, but she did not fall. Instead, she walked slowly, one step after another, down the aisle, without groom, without music, without hope. The guests froze. Some stood, others watched in stunned horror. She walked all the way to the altar and laid her bouquet there. Then she turned to the crowd and said, "Forgive the absence. The bride has chosen to keep the promise alone." In the back row, a tall man rose. He was not among the invited. His dark hair was flecked with gray, and his deep green eyes studied Evelyn not with pity, but with curiosity. Alexander Thorne, Duke of Westridge, had not attended a social gathering in over 5 years. Since the death of his wife and child, he had retreated into his estate like a ghost of the man he once was. He had come today only because Lady Evelyn had once written letters to his late wife. Gentle, kind-hearted notes that had eased her pain during her illness. He'd remembered the name and the kindness and thought to honor her. Now, watching Evelyn's quiet dignity in the face of humiliation, something stirred in him that had been silent for years. Outside, Evelyn leaned against the chapel wall, her breath ragged, her world collapsed. And then he spoke. "Lady Evelyn," said a warm, even voice, "you don't know me, but I know enough of you to say this. You are braver than any woman I've seen." She turned. Her cheeks were blotched from tears, but she stood straight. "Do I know you?" "No," he said, "but I knew your letters." She blinked. "You're the Duke of Westridge." He inclined his head. "I am. What do you want?" He hesitated. "To make you an offer." She almost laughed. "You choose this moment to insult me?" "It's not insult," he said gently. "It's rescue of reputation, of future, of dignity. I would offer marriage today, now, to erase this moment." Evelyn stared. "That's absurd. Perhaps. But it would make you a wife today, not a woman scorned, and give you protection from what's coming. You know they'll talk. They already are. I have no need of a love match, only peace. And you need protection. So, we marry, in name, in public. If later you wish for an annulment, I will not object." Her breath caught. She should refuse. She should scream. But instead, she whispered, "Why me?" He looked at her steady. "Because you didn't run. You stood." An hour later, under the same altar where she'd been left, Lady Evelyn Ashbourne became the Duchess of Westridge, without music, without guests, but with her head high, and her heart pounding. The carriage ride to Westridge Hall was long and hung. Wordless Evelyn sat opposite her new husband, hands folded tightly in her lap, her mind a storm of unanswered questions. Married. She was married. Not to the man she had been engaged to for nearly a year, but to a stranger with eyes like thunderclouds, and a voice that unnerved her with its calm as the carriage rolled through the wrought iron gates. Evelyn caught her first glimpse of Westridge Hall. It was vast, a towering estate of gray stone and ivy, its windows tall and solemn, its grounds manicured, yet somehow joyless. The house stood like a monument to grief, untouched by time or laughter. The air felt colder the moment she stepped down. A butler met them at the entrance, bowing low. "Welcome home, Your Grace." And Your Grace. Evelyn flinched slightly. At the title, Her Grace, it no longer belonged to some future possibility. It was hers. Now, inside, the manor was dim, quiet as a crypt. Heavy drapes blocked most of the light, and the air held the faint scent of lavender and dust. Alexander led her into a sitting room with high ceilings and old portraits. "I imagine you'll want a room of your own," he said simply. Evelyn nodded. "That would be best. I will have the blue chamber prepared." She turned to face him. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really do this?" He met her eyes. "Because I saw a woman being destroyed for the weakness of a man, and I could not watch that happen. You barely know me." He tilted his head. "I know enough. Sometimes that's all we get." She didn't respond, but the silence between them felt less suffocating than before. Later that evening, Evelyn stood in the blue chamber, now hers. The bed was canopied and untouched. The fireplace crackled softly. A maid had laid out a nightdress and a simple brush. She looked into the mirror and did not recognize the woman staring back. No longer a bride, not quite a wife. Somewhere between a tragedy and a question. The days that followed were strange. Alexander disappeared for hours, sometimes the whole day. Evelyn wandered the halls, noting the covered paintings, the closed music room, the untouched nursery. Moved quietly, respectfully. No one asked questions. At dinner, Alexander was courteous, but distant. Their conversations were shallow. Weather, harvests, politics, never personal. Never warm, but never cruel. He left her be, gave her space, and in doing so, confused her even more. One afternoon, Evelyn found herself in the library. Rows upon rows of books lined the walls, untouched and smelling of leather and time. She ran her fingers across the spines, stopping at a worn volume of poetry, Wordsworth. When she opened it, a note slipped out. The handwriting was feminine. Soft. "To my dearest Alex, when the world is too loud, come find me in the quiet." It was signed, Clara. That night, at dinner, Evelyn spoke first. "Was Clara your wife?" Alexander stiffened, but nodded. "Yes, she loved you very much." He didn't answer at first. "Then, we married young. She died giving birth to our daughter. Our daughter died 2 days later." Evelyn's breath caught. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "I don't speak of them, not out of shame, but because I don't know how to say their names without losing something." She looked down. "And now you've married a stranger to protect her from shame. Do you ever stop sacrificing pieces of yourself?" He stood abruptly. "Good night, Your Grace." And with that, he left the room. That night, Evelyn lay awake, staring at the canopy. She had stepped into a stranger's life, carrying her own wounds, only to find his were older, deeper. And somehow, she no longer felt quite so alone. 2 weeks had passed since the wedding, and still, no announcement had been sent to society papers. No formal debut of the new Duchess of Westridge. No celebration. No letters of congratulations. Just silence, thick, oppressive silence. But society had begun to murmur, nonetheless. In the parlors of London and the country estates of Hampshire, rumors spread like spilled perfume. "Did you hear? The Duke of Westridge took a bride. The very same day she was jilted at the altar. I heard he didn't even know her. I heard she begged him. I heard he married her for her dowry, though they say she's penniless." Evelyn read none of it, but she could feel it. Every glance from the servants, every letter her mother sent, all left unopened on her dressing table. It was a ghostly kind of fame, known for shame, not for merit. One morning, Mrs. Hathaway, the housekeeper, approached Evelyn in the hallway. "Your Grace," she said kindly, "there is to be a charity ball next week in York. The family used to attend before everything." Evelyn looked up. "Does the Duke intend to go?" "I do not know, but your presence, I think, would be well received." That evening at supper, Evelyn broached the subject. "I was told about the charity ball in York," she said. "I would like to go." Alexander didn't look up from his plate. "You may do as you please. I'd like you to come with me." Now he looked up. There was a pause. "Then why?" She kept her eyes steady. "Because I am your wife, and the world needs to see that." The ride to York was long and filled with icy wind. Alexander remained silent for most of it. But as the carriage neared the brightly lit manor, he finally spoke. "You realize what you're walking into?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "Then why go?" She turned to him. "Because I won't hide. Not from the truth. Not from them. You married me. And I will not be treated like a shadow in your home." He studied her for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. "Barely. Clara would have liked you." The ball was grand. Gilded chandeliers, music that swept through the air, and silks that shimmered under candlelight. But as Evelyn stepped in, arm in arm with her husband, the room fell briefly quiet. Not silent, just long enough for judgment to settle into the corners. She held her head high. Alexander offered no grand introduction, but neither did he let her go. They walked the ballroom, she in blue satin, he in tailored black, like they belonged. She could feel the eyes, hear the murmurs, but she focused on her breath until a voice stopped her. "Lady Evelyn." She turned, and there stood Lord Thomas. He looked the same, tall, golden-haired, charming. The man who had once made her laugh in secret gardens. The man who had left her. "I hadn't expected to see you here," he said, eyes flickering between her and the Duke. "Nor I you," she replied, ice in her tone. Alexander's hand tightened slightly around hers. "We are leaving," he murmured. But she stayed rooted. "I want to hear what he has to say," Evelyn whispered. Thomas hesitated. I never meant to hurt you. I made a mistake." She tilted her head. "Yes, you did. And I thank you for it." And with that, she turned her back on him. Later that night, in their guest chamber, Alexander poured her a glass of wine. "You didn't have to face him." "Yes," she said. "I did. And I needed you beside me." He looked at her with something like admiration. "You're stronger than you appear." She smiled faintly. "You are too." They clinked glasses. Not as lovers, not yet, but as two souls learning the quiet strength of choosing to stay. The journey back from York was quieter than expected. Not cold, but thoughtful. As if something had shifted between them. Evelyn looked out the carriage window at the snowy fields, her hands warm inside fur-lined gloves, her heart warmer still, not because of Lord Thomas's humiliation, but because of Alexander's presence. He had stood beside her, not as a duty, not as an obligation, but as a partner, and she had felt it, in the strength of his hand, in the silence between their words. Back at Westridge Hall, snow had begun to fall in earnest. The fireplace in the library burned brightly, casting golden light across velvet. Chairs and old books. Evelyn stood in her nightgown, hair unpinned, robe drawn close, watching the flames flicker. She hadn't meant to wander there. She couldn't sleep. Her mind spun with memories and questions. Then she heard the door open. She turned. It was Alexander. He wore only a shirt and dark trousers, sleeves rolled to his elbows. hair slightly disheveled. He stopped when he saw her. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said softly. "Nor I," she replied. They stood for a long moment, neither moving. Then he stepped closer. "I wanted to thank you for York," she smiled gently. "You've thanked me enough." "No," he said, "not truly. I've lived in this house like a ghost for 5 years. You reminded me I'm still breathing." Her smile faded. She looked at him, not as a duke, not as the man who rescued her from disgrace, but as someone hurt, still healing. And something rose in her chest, a strange, fierce tenderness. Alexander walked to the window and looked out at the falling snow. "Clara used to sing when it snowed," he said. Said it made her feel like the world was clean again. Evelyn stepped beside him. "Did you love her very much?" "Yes," he said, without hesitation. "But I love her memory now, not the woman. She's gone. And do you believe you can love again?" He turned to her. "I don't know, but I know this. You've made me feel something I thought I'd buried." He stepped closer. "And that terrifies me." She should have stepped back, should have thanked him, should have gone to bed and kept her distance. But instead, Evelyn whispered, "I'm afraid too." And then his hands were on her waist, gently, reverently, as if she might break, and she leaned forward. Their lips met, not with hunger, but with longing, with restraint, with unsaid words caught between breaths. When they pulled apart, she kept her eyes closed. And then he stepped back. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "That wasn't fair to you." She opened her eyes. "Why?" "Because I don't want you to think I did this, married you for this." She touched his arm. "I don't think that. But it's better we take things slowly," he added. Evelyn nodded, yes, slowly. That night, in her bed, she touched her lips and wondered how something so brief could leave such an ache. The next morning, they met at breakfast. Polite, calm, but when their hands brushed reaching for the butter, they both paused. Something had changed. The house still held its silence, but now, in its heart, burned a quiet fire. Evelyn was beginning to find a rhythm. In the quiet, she read in the mornings, walked the gardens at noon, played piano in the evenings, softly, only when she was certain no one was listening. But someone always was. Alexander never entered the music room. Yet more than once, Evelyn noticed fresh flowers placed on the piano. Wildflowers, never. Arranged, as if someone had gathered them by hand and left them without a word. She never asked. And he never explained that their dinners had grown warmer. Conversations now stretched beyond weather and politics. They spoke of books, old stories, favorite dishes. Alexander laughed once, a real laugh, and Evelyn found herself smiling just to see it. One night, over roasted duck and stewed apples, he asked her, "What did you dream of before all this?" She hesitated. "Paris." He raised an eyebrow. "I wanted to see paintings at the Louvre," she said, "not to impress anyone, just to stand before them, alone, quiet." He nodded. "You still can." She blinked. "As your Duchess?" "As Evelyn," he replied. "Who says you can't be both?" Her chest tightened with something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. But dreams are fragile things. On the morning of the 10th snow, a carriage arrived, a black one with golden crest. Alexander stood at the window the moment it turned onto the drive. His face darkened. "Who is it?" Evelyn asked, stepping beside him. "My brother." Lord Henry Thorne was everything his brother was not. Charming, polished, smiling, even when delivering a knife to the heart. He entered Westridge Hall with fur-lined gloves and a silver-tipped cane, eyes sweeping the manor like he already owned. Well, he said, removing his hat. The runaway duke and his scandalous bride. How very operatic. Alexander said nothing. Evelyn straightened her spine. "You're not welcome here." Henry laughed. "Oh, I'm not here for tea, darling. I'm here for the will." Evelyn frowned. "The will?" Alexander's jaw clenched. "My uncle. He died last week. Left an estate in Dorset. There are complications." Henry stepped closer to Evelyn. "And those complications include a new duchess, who appeared just in time to muddy inheritance lines." Alexander stepped forward. "That's enough." Henry smirked. "I wonder what society would say if they knew the marriage was unconsummated." The air turned to ice. Alexander's voice was low. "Get out, before I forget your blood." Henry bowed slightly. "As you wish." But before leaving, he turned to Evelyn. "You should ask him, my dear, what else he's hiding from you." And then he was gone. That night, Evelyn found Alexander in the library, staring into the fire. "He's lying," Alexander said, before she could speak. "Is he?" He turned. "Yes, but not about everything." Evelyn waited. Alexander sighed. "The estate. It was meant to be split. But now that I've married, it changes the balance. Henry thinks I wed you just for the legal leverage." "Did you?" He looked at her, pained. "I married you to protect you. But now, I find myself wanting more than just duty. I want you to stay. Not because of scandal. Because of who you are." Evelyn's eyes shimmered. "And if I asked for more?" He stepped closer. "Then I would give it. All of it. But not until you want it freely." They stood by the fire, shadows dancing between them. Not quite touching, not quite apart. Two hearts inching closer, still afraid of breaking. Snow turned to rain. Heavy drops fell from gray skies, washing the estate in a constant hush. Evelyn sat by the window, watching the gardens drip and glisten, lost in thought. Alexander had been more present since his brother's visit, walking with her, reading by the fire, even smiling now and then. Yet a veil remained between them, like glass too thick to break, but too thin to ignore. He was kind, protective, attentive, but not entirely hers. Not yet. That evening, while searching the study for a particular book, Evelyn found a locked drawer in the desk. She hesitated, but curiosity, that old flame, won. She searched the drawers nearby until she found a small brass key. It clicked with a soft resistance. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed in Alexander's handwriting, all unopened. Her name was on every one. Lady Evelyn Ashbourne, Ashbourne Hall, Mayfair, London. The oldest one dated back to 2 weeks before her wedding to Lord Thomas. Hands trembling, she pulled one out and unfolded it. "You do not know me, Lady Evelyn, but I know of your kindness. I know of the letters you wrote to my wife when she was dying. And I know that someone who can offer such gentleness to a stranger must be someone worth knowing. If ever you find yourself needing an ally, write to me. I owe you more than you understand." The next letter was dated the morning of her wedding day. "I fear this will not reach you in time, but if your groom proves unworthy, I will be waiting outside the chapel, not as a savior, only as someone who sees you." Evelyn dropped the letter. He had been there. He had written to her. She had never received a single word. That night, she found Alexander in the stables, rushing down a horse with sleeves rolled up, his hair damp from rain. "You wrote to me," she said, holding the letters in her hand. He looked up, startled, then sighed. "You found them. Why didn't I receive them?" "I sent them to your father's estate. I imagine he destroyed them." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought maybe you were better off never knowing. I didn't want to be one more man who made choices for you." She stepped forward. "But you weren't just anyone. You were there, watching, waiting. Why?" He met her eyes. "Because I wanted to be the man who showed up when no one else did." Silence stretched between them. Heavy, charged dot, and then Evelyn said, "I wish you had told me. I wish I had known someone like you existed back then." "Come here." Henry laughed. "Oh, I'm not here for tea, darling. I'm here for the will." Evelyn frowned. "The will?" Alexander's jaw clenched. "My uncle. He died last week. Left an estate in Dorset. There are complications." Henry stepped closer to Evelyn. "And those complications include a new duchess, who appeared just in time to muddy inheritance lines." Alexander stepped forward. "That's enough." Henry smirked. "I wonder what society would say if they knew the marriage was unconsummated." The air turned to ice. Alexander's voice was low. "Get out, before I forget your blood." Henry bowed slightly. "As you wish." But before leaving, he turned to Evelyn. "You should ask him, my dear, what else he's hiding from you." And then he was gone. That night, Evelyn found Alexander in the library, staring into the fire. "He's lying," Alexander said, before she could speak. "Is he?" He turned. "Yes, but not about everything." Evelyn waited. Alexander sighed. "The estate, it was meant to be split. But now that I've married, it changes the balance. Henry thinks I wed you just for the legal leverage." "Did you?" He looked at her, pained. "I married you to protect you. But now, I find myself wanting more than just duty. I want you to stay, not because of scandal, because of who you are." Evelyn's eyes shimmered. "And if I asked for more?" He stepped closer. "Then I would give it, all of it, but not until you want it freely." They stood by the fire, shadows dancing between them, not quite touching, not quite apart. Two hearts inching closer, still afraid of breaking. Snow turned to rain. Heavy drops fell from gray skies, washing the estate in a constant hush. Evelyn sat by the window, watching the gardens drip and glisten, lost in thought. Alexander had been more present since his brother's visit, walking with her, reading by the fire, even smiling now and then. Yet a veil remained between them, like glass too thick to break, but too thin to ignore. He was kind, protective, attentive, but not entirely hers. Not yet. That evening, while searching the study for a particular book, Evelyn found a locked drawer in the desk. She hesitated, but curiosity, that old flame, won. She searched the drawers nearby until she found a small brass key. It clicked with a soft resistance. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed in Alexander's handwriting, all unopened. Her name was on every one. Lady Evelyn Ashbourne, Ashbourne Hall, Mayfair, London. The oldest one dated back to 2 weeks before her wedding to Lord Thomas. Hands trembling, she pulled one out and unfolded it. "You do not know me, Lady Evelyn, but I know of your kindness. I know of the letters you wrote to my wife when she was dying. And I know that someone who can offer such gentleness to a stranger must be someone worth knowing. If ever you find yourself needing an ally, write to me. I owe you more than you understand." The next letter was dated the morning of her wedding day. "I fear this will not reach you in time, but if your groom proves unworthy, I will be waiting outside the chapel, not as a savior, only as someone who sees you." Evelyn dropped the letter. He had been there. He had written to her. She had never received a single word. That night, she found Alexander in the stables, brushing down a horse with sleeves rolled up, his hair damp from rain. "You wrote to me," she said, holding the letters in her hand. He looked up, startled, then sighed. "You found them. Why didn't I receive them?" "I sent them to your father's estate. I imagine he destroyed them." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought maybe you were better off never knowing. I didn't want to be one more man who made choices for you." She stepped forward. "But you weren't just anyone. You were there. watching, waiting. Why? He met her eyes. Because I wanted to be the man who showed up when no one else did. Silence stretched between them. Heavy, charged out, and then Evelyn said, I wish you had told me. I wish I had known someone like you existed back then. Alexander's voice softened. You know now. They stood in the rain-soaked barn, breath fogging in the chill. And this time, when he reached for her, she didn't flinch. His hand brushed her cheek. Her lips parted. Their kiss was slow, not desperate, but certain, like the meeting of two souls who had waited through lifetimes. Later that night, Evelyn lay in his arms for the first time. The rain continued outside, but within Westridge Hall, the silence had changed. It no longer whispered of ghosts. It sighed with something alive. Something hopeful. The days that followed were unlike any Evelyn had known. She woke each morning in Alexander's arms. They shared breakfast in the sunroom, laughed softly over shared memories, strolled the gardens hand in hand. It wasn't grand passion or endless declarations. Was something quieter, deeper, the gentle unfolding of trust, the feeling that she had, perhaps for the first time, truly come home. But love never lived long without being tested, and storms often returned. Where peace had only just begun, it came in the form of a letter, sealed with red wax, the royal crest stamped upon it. Alexander opened it with a quiet sigh and read it in silence. When he looked up, Evelyn knew something had shifted. What is it? She asked. My summons, he said. The court has called me to explain my marriage and to address my brother's claim that it was a manipulation to claim the Dorset estate. Evelyn felt her stomach twist. And me? Am I summoned as well? No, they've made it clear you are optional. His voice was tight. She stepped closer. Then I'll go with you. You won't face them alone. He hesitated. It will be brutal. They will question everything. Our marriage, your past, your worth. She lifted her chin. Then let them. I am not ashamed. Alexander reached for her hand and brought it to his lips. Neither am I. They arrived in London 3 days. Later, the halls of court were glittering, cruel places, where whispers carried weight and reputation could be shattered in a single afternoon. Evelyn wore blue velvet, her hair pinned high, her eyes steady, but her heart thundered in her chest. Alexander stood beside her, proud and silent. They faced the tribunal. A group of noblemen, including 2 dukes and a distant cousin of the Queen, Lord Henry, was there. 2, lounging smugly in the corner. It began politely, then it turned sharp. Was this marriage arranged prior to your engagement with Lord Thomas breaking off? No, Alexander answered firmly. Were you aware of Lady Evelyn's status as a rejected bride? Yes, that is precisely why I married her. Murmurs. Someone chuckled. A question aimed at Evelyn. Do you consider yourself a suitable duchess, despite your unfortunate past? Evelyn's voice was cold as steel. I consider myself someone who rose from disgrace with her dignity intact. If that disqualifies me, then the title is beneath me. Gasps. One of the older lords frowned. That is dangerously close to arrogance, madam. Alexander stepped forward. It is not arrogance to survive shame. It is courage. But then came Henry's final blow. He stood and produced a document. A letter, he said, from Lady Evelyn to Lord Thomas, dated the day before the wedding. In it, she begs him to marry her, despite rumors of impropriety. He handed it to the court. Evelyn went pale. Alexander took the letter, scanned it, then handed it back. It proves nothing, he said, but Evelyn's voice was quiet. It's mine. I did write that. I was desperate. I was humiliated. Henry smiled. So the Duchess admits she chased her title. Convenient, isn't it, that she landed in your arms mere hours later? The silence in the chamber was thick. Then Evelyn spoke again. "Yes, I begged Thomas to marry me. I loved him then. I was naive. But he walked away. And Alexander, he didn't pick me out of pity. He gave me dignity when I had none. That's more than most of you have ever offered a woman." She turned to Alexander. "If that ruins your claim, then let it. I will not apologize for surviving." Alexander smiled, slowly, deliberately. "Let it be known," he said, "that I married a woman of strength, not strategy. And if this court chooses scandal over honor, then it says more about them than us." They left the room hand in. Hand. No ruling was given that day. But in the hearts of those who watched, something had shifted. Not everyone was blind to real courage. The days after the tribunal were filled with silence. Officially, no verdict had been reached. The court had adjourned with whispers of further deliberation. But the message was clear. Alexander and Evelyn's union had shaken the pillars of aristocracy. They returned to Westridge Hall, uncertain of what awaited them. Evelyn spent her hours riding alone, letting the cold wind sting her face as if to clear the ache in her chest. Alexander retreated to the library, surrounded by maps and estate ledgers. He barely read, but the space between them no longer felt like fear. It felt like mourning. They had given their truth and now waited for judgment, not from each other, but from the world. On the third morning, a rider arrived at full gallop, a letter, sealed not in red, but gold. Alexander read it slowly by the fire, lips pressed tight. When he finished, he handed it to Evelyn without a word. She read, "The Crown hereby recognizes the marriage between His Grace, Alexander Thorne, and Lady Evelyn Ashbourne, now Duchess of Westridge. The inheritance of Dorset Estate is confirmed. Let this be the final word on the matter. However, it is the will of the Queen that the Duchess refrain from representing the Crown in court functions, at least for the foreseeable future, in the interest of public decorum." It was both victory and insult. They had won, but she was still branded unworthy in the eyes of power. Evelyn folded the letter carefully, and then she smiled, not with joy, with resolve. She entered the music room where Alexander sat. Reading in the corner, she held the letter. "Is this enough for you?" she asked quietly. He looked up. "The estate? The approval? Or you?" "All of it." He closed the book. "I never wanted Dorset. I never cared about their ceremonies. But you," he stood and crossed the room. "You, Evelyn, are enough. Even if the world calls you scandal, I will always call you mine." Her voice cracked. "Then let's give Dorset away." He blinked. "What?" She held his gaze. "Let's sell it. Use the money to restore the orphanage your uncle closed. To build something that matters." Alexander stared at her, then broke into a soft laugh. "You are extraordinary. And you are free now," she said. "So am I." The announcement caused a ripple through society. The Duke and Duchess of Westridge had given up their claim to one of England's wealthiest estates. Rumors swirled, madness, guilt, rebellion. But within months, construction began on a new refuge for war widows and children without names. A plaque outside read, "Built not with coin, but with courage." And slowly, the narrative changed. Evelyn was no longer just the girl abandoned. At the altar. She was the Duchess who chose compassion over crowns. Alexander and Evelyn returned to Westridge Hall, not as figures of scandal, but as symbols of a different nobility. They hosted no grand balls, but they opened their doors to musicians, poets, orphaned girls, and broken men who had no place in the gilded halls of London. Their house became a home, one where shame was not feared, but healed. One night, by the fire, Alexander took Evelyn's hand. "I never asked," he said softly, "but I need to know." She turned to him, Would you have married me if Thomas hadn't left? She took a long breath. No, she said honestly. I would have been blind to who you were, to who I could be. He smiled. Then I'm grateful for every broken piece that led us here. She leaned in, forehead against his. So am I. They kissed then. Not for the first time, but for the first time, without any ghosts between them. Just love. Quiet. Enduring. Free. Years later. Westridge Hall remained untouched by fashion or scandal, but something new adorned its west wing. A large portrait, painted in oil, framed in dark wood and sunlight. It showed a woman not in silk or jewels, but in a simple blue gown, her hair loosely gathered, eyes steady, soft and strong all at once. Beneath the painting, a plaque read, Evelyn, Duchess of Westridge. A woman who taught a duke to feel again, and a kingdom to look twice. Children often asked if she was a queen. No, their caretakers replied. She was something rarer. Evelyn and Alexander aged together in peace. They never returned to court. They never needed to. Because the world they built, with letters never sent, courage rarely seen, and love never expected, was enough. More than enough. And maybe, just maybe, love like that still waits behind the doors we dare to open. Did this story touch your heart? If Evelyn's journey reminded you of someone who rose from disgrace with dignity, or if you've ever found love when you thought all was lost, leave a comment below and share your story. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable tales of courage, romance, and second chances.